Welcome to Books in the Freezer, a podcast dedicated to the deliciously disturbing world of horror fiction. I'm your host, Stephanie, and I am here with returning guests, Erin Adams and Rachel Harrison, to talk about the adult summer scares picks this year. So, welcome to the show.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Hello.
Yay. I am always so excited to see what books they pick for summer scares because I really do feel like they do such a good job of getting a good range of themes and just picking really good titles. So I was very excited to see the adult titles this year.
Hey, thank you.
Me too. I was excited for myself, but also I'm such huge I was like, good for me. No, I'm kidding. But um I it was extremely excited to see the company I was in. I
Hmm.
was like, not all this is a double ego boost. I was a pick and
Yeah,
I'm
you're a
with
pick.
Jackal and this thing between us. I'm obsessed with both of those books. And yeah, so this has been a great time for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. And not just the adult section, but all of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
different ranges. I'm like, oh, well, there goes any money I planned on saving. And we'll be acquiring all of these.
I've been like making my way through. I read The Nest by Kenneth Opel, which is like the middle grade story. It is creepy. It's like
Mhm.
it's about like
I
evil
need to catch up
wasps.
on these other picks. The
Yeah, middle grade does not play. I don't know. I feel like there was a memo sent out of being like terrify the children immediately.
I saw a TikTok today that's like the children, they yearn for horror. We had it in our day, we had like the Goosebumps and Fear Street and like Are You Afraid of the Dark? Like the children have always yearned for the horror, to be scared.
Absolutely.
I read My Aunt is a Monster and it was very sweet though. So a
Hmm.
different tone. It was very cute. It's a graphic novel. Um, but yeah, Summer Scares is a library program that the HWA does to promote reading of horror throughout the summer. So they pick 3 books in an adult category, a young adult category, and a middle grade category, and they pick stuff that's like at least a few years old so it's more accessible in the library. It's not like a super new release that people just like can't get their hands on, something that's been out for a few years that people will be able to hopefully check out and read sometime in the summer. But with this being a library program, what are your guys's experiences, relationships to libraries?
Um, at least for me, I've always like had a relationship with the library. I remember being a kid and I grew up in my parents divorced when I was like 3. And the only thing that was in common between my mom's house and my dad's house was the library. So it's like, oh, I'm always going to end up going to the library. And I remember being a kid and like spending hours there. And of course, my poor siblings who were dragged along with me are just like, what are we doing here? And I'm like, but it's the best place in the world, you guys. And I just remember like taking out tons of books every week. I was that kid who broke the limit of books you could take out. They let me take out like 1 or 2 more because I would read them. Um, and yeah, like that's when it comes to childhood. And then obviously through all my education, like being in undergrad, the library was the place to get things done. It was like a nice little respite. And I still think of the library as that. Like it's a nice little respite from whatever's going on. I live in New York City, so there's, a massive public library system, but every branch of the New York Public Library I go to is like this quiet little intellectual oasis that I like going to, and was one of the few places in New York where you can go and be without having to pay anything, and that is
Yeah.
worth its weight in gold.
Same for me as a kid. Um, I loved going to the library. I We had a tiny little library in my town that was like 2 rooms. It was like the kids' room and then everything else in the other
Mhm.
room. And it was just very like cozy and charming, and um, I loved going there. And then in my elementary school. My elementary school librarian, her name was Mrs. Mason, and I was a teacher's pet and like would always suck up to her. She would always, give me good books. And um, I remember a few books that I really loved, and one of them was a Baba Yaga book, and it had
Okay.
really scary illustrations, really scary.
Yeah.
And I've tried to find the book in adulthood, but I can't find it. I can still see the image of the scary images in the book, but I haven't been able to find it as an adult. And then, yeah, through my teens, in my teenage years, they built a new library in my town because the old one was so tiny. And the new one was like very chic and enormous. And it had that like it smelled like books, and it was just the best place to be. Um, and when I got my driver's license, like, I'm gonna drive to the library. uh, yeah. And then yeah, I lived in New York City, and so I lived in Brooklyn, and um, I lived off Eastern Parkway, and the Brooklyn Library is there, and that's also a gorgeous library. So spend a lot of time there, and yeah, it's one of the few places in the city you can go and not have to spend money. But yeah, just it's an oasis. It's a shelter in the storm of life. So love me some libraries.
Oh, definitely. I yeah, my family was a big library family because yeah, it was a free place to be, but also we were in Southern California where it was so hot, so it was like free AC also. It was just like a cool
Yes.
place to be from like the desert heat outside. But yeah, this year, so the adult picks are Jackal, Such Sharp Teeth, and This Thing Between Us. So would you guys mind telling us what your books are about? Erin, sorry, this time I'm gonna.
It's just my constant effort of trying to be polite. It's like
Same.
the fight is real. All right. So Jackal follows a young black woman named Liz, who, after many, many years away from her hometown, finally decides to return for her best friend's wedding. At that wedding, her best friend's young daughter vanishes during the reception. And as this, massive manhunt for the child begins, Liz realizes that she thinks she's seen something like this before. Something like this happened when she was in high school. And as she starts and everyone starts to dig, she realizes there's been a lot of missing children in and around the woods of this town. But because they're all young black girls, they've been swept under the rug for generations at this point. And so now she has to figure out what's really happening in the woods before it is too late for her friend's young daughter, and for some ways, before it is too late for herself.
I know. Well, Rachel and I both loved this book. It just hits like so many of those things that I love. It's like coming home to your small town, but also like there's been things going on in your small town that you don't know about and like researching what's going on. There's so much. I
Oh, thank you. I like it a lot too. It feels so strange. I'm like, you guys, I love this book. It's like, yeah, I know you wrote it.
Well, I mean, and it's such a beautiful story. Like Liz is such a great character, and it also hits the horror genre, the true crime genre. Like
yeah.
it just like goes into for fans of people who are interested in true crime, and for people who love horror. It's just that like perfect
Mhm.
mix, and then it has the emotional depth and compelling characters. It just yeah. It's hard when I
Yeah.
really love a book. I'm just like, it's we were Stephanie, we were talking about this the other day. When I really love a book, it's just word salad. I'm just like, it's this and it's good and it's just good. It's just the best. You have to read it.
Yeah.
It's harder
Well,
to articulate when you really love a book.
true. Well, thank y'all. Thank y'all.
Yeah. Also loved the complex, like, mother-daughter relationship. Like, there's just so much. One thing I thought it would be fun to do is if we had, like, a movie pairing
Mhm.
for each of the books. So what movie would you pair Jackal with?
So this is a movie that I stumbled upon recently. So when I saw that, I was like, I have the best thing. I just saw it. It is a film called Lovely Deep and Dark. It's set
Mm.
in a national park. Where this woman who is a new park ranger discovers that, first off, I think this is true. There is no official database of missing people if you go missing in a national park. So people just kind of disappear and we don't know all that much about them. And so, of course, someone goes missing. And as she's digging, it's not, it quickly goes from who is taking people to what is taking people. And I'm a huge fan of what is the thing in the woods, the thing that may or may not be in the woods. And this definitely plays with that expectation.
I'm gonna have to watch that.
Were you scared of the woods as a kid? Like, did you live you I know that you lived in Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
Did you live in the town from the book? Like,
Yes,
oh,
yes.
okay, yeah.
I lived in Johnstown. My mom still lives in
Okay.
Johnstown. Was I afraid of the woods as a kid? Yeah, I feel like an appropriate amount, especially growing up in Appalachia, because
Yeah.
I don't it's really alarming the amount of scary stories about stuff in the woods that I heard growing up that were all local. Like in doing research and just digging through my own history, I just remember finding just it's like local legends, these like specific things. And yes, of course, the huge urban legends. Like I feel like everyone has like a missing kids on the bus story. Um, but in Appalachia, there's like just all and like the rules of things that you can and can't do in the woods, like don't whistle if something is calling your name, just ignore it. I just love that kind of constant pull of, if you believe in something and if you are consciously afraid of it, it makes it worse, so it becomes the game of like, do not panic, don't panic. Like, but yeah, no, I was pretty afraid of the woods as a kid, just like I am also afraid of large bodies of water. I'm not the best person for a cruise or a boat situation.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You catch my ass on a cruise, please. I've lost my mind. Send help.
It's a
If I'm
doppelganger,
like
Rachel.
posting on Instagram, like, can't wait to get on this big death ship, please. I've lost my mind. I don't get it. I don't get it. But also there's the flood, like the
Yeah.
famous flood. So I would think that also I love like please understand what I was about to be like, I love real life disaster, which makes me sound like a terrible person. But I just am so fascinated with like these terrible things that have happened. I'm not making it better for
No,
myself,
no, no.
but like the story is so devastating and interesting that like real life tragedy that you weave into the I mean it's part of the fabric of the place and
Mhm.
Mhm.
it becomes part of the book. I really love that aspect too. And yeah, water a lot of water, no
Just
thanks.
yeah, no water where I can't see land.
Yeah.
I don't like that. But no, thank you. I remember when I was writing Jackal, I attempted to be like, it's from a mysterious town in the mysterious Rust Belt, and then as I kept revising, getting more specific, I'm like, no, this is just Johnstown.
Yeah.
Just name it at this point. It's getting very obvious. Like not many places in the mountains experience massive historical flooding that changes the DNA of the town.
Yeah.
Have you heard feedback about how the book's been taken in Johnstown? Like, have you done, like, events there?
I've done two events there, and so far people like it. People are they're here for it. They're here for the honesty in which I
Mhm.
portray Johnstown. And like that's the biggest response I've gotten is like, thank you for getting it right. Because I remember when I was again working on Jackal, it was again, I love this TV show. It's a lovely TV show. But Mayor of Easttown came out, and while the obviously, incredible, the mystery elements are so 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 strong, but just some of the portrayal of the Rust Belt was just like nagging at me. And like, it's not like, ooh, it's not like that. There's just such depth and complexity and hurt and there's just so much more. It's not, people, I feel like there's this risk when portraying the Rust Belt to say people, oh, people are complaining. And I'm like, no, people's lives got totally ripped apart and they're trying to put them back together. And yeah, so when it came to portraying Johnstown, I really leaned into that and leaned into what my experience of that place is. And so far, knock on wood, people have been pretty positive. And I'm like, part of me's like, and if they're not, please leave me alone. Like, just leave me alone. Let me write my stories on my
Yeah.
typewriter.
Well, it's a feat to be able to weave in that the complex nuanced portrayal of the place that you do
Yeah.
in a story that's kind of but not really about the place.
Mhm.
Like, it's hard to get that many layers in when it's the setting, it's not the protagonist, it's not, you know, the antagonist is both the thing in the woods and also in some ways the place, the setting is kind of the secondary antagonist. So to be
Yeah.
able to like really nail those nuances when it's not the central villain or the central plot, I think is a huge accomplishment. And I this is your debut novel, right?
Yeah.
Bananas. That is
Thank you.
bananas.
I'm just thank you all. I don't know. I just no, I do know. I had an idea and I worked really, really,
Yeah.
really hard. And it's like, no, like thank you. And all that means so much because that's like what I set out to do, like to attempt to answer this unanswerable question and to try and put all the elements together. Like there are, multiple antagonists, there's multiple protagonists, like there's a lot
Mhm.
of forces at work. And yeah, to get to a place to attempt to answer an unanswerable question and kind of like pull it all apart for once and see the different elements and how they work together. I mean, for me, I understand that, some people find that a little unsatisfying, but for me, I love that stuff. I love just immersing myself in something and seeing all the pieces and know that sometimes they're not all going to come back together in a nice neat little bow because that's not the type of story it is, like that's not the type of place it is. Like even looking at, I also think what helps is that the Johnstown of that novel of Jackal is like already a museum piece. Like it's not the town I grew up in is not the town that I go home and visit. Like it's already changed so much and it's even changed since the book came out. Like it's like everything, it's changing, it's moving, it's evolving, it's growing, and that's really exciting.
You brought up Mayor of Easttown, which now like all I can hear is the accents. This is
Oh God.
great. Like
Where was it
I
supposed
want
to
to
be
go
set?
home.
It's
With the
outside of
dog.
Philadelphia, I believe.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
yeah.
Which
Um
is similar but different. Like the proximity to a city just makes that whole place a
yeah.
little different. But yeah, no, that accent was oof. That was rough. That was rough.
I do appreciate the Wawa references in that show, though. As
Yes.
being from a Jersey girl. But Jackal has a very like first season of True Detective, most recent
Oh,
season of True Detective feel. Where it's like there's like the little bit of the uncanny, but it's also like based in
Yeah.
reality. And now I really want a True Detective Jackal, any adaptation of Jackal, but like it's got those like. I really want to see the movie. The movie you said is called that you were your movie comp
oh,
Jackal,
lovely, deep and dark.
Lovely Deep and Dark. I also feel like but like reading Jackal definitely has those. I feel like people haven't read Jackal yet. First of all, what are you doing with your life? Second of all, like if you like the True Detective the most
Hmm.
recent season, Night Country, and then the first season. I feel like
Yeah.
Jackal has definitely has the vibe.
Oh my god, thank you, because those are my favorite seasons of True Detective.
Someone pitch it to Isita Lopez. Get it
Yeah,
to her.
I
ooh,
know. I'm like, please, I will airmail you this book anywhere you are in the world.
One of the other adult summer scares picks is Such Sharp Teeth. So, Rachel, can you tell us about that?
sure. Um, so also a going home to your hometown story, a little bit different. Such Sharp Teeth is about Rory Morris, who is a successful, independent, 20 something Manhattanite who returns to her hometown when her pregnant twin sister, Scarlett, asks her to come keep her company. Scarlett just broke up with her longtime boyfriend and is kind of going through it. So Rory drops everything to go home. She's not particularly jazzed about it. She didn't have the greatest childhood. She has some bad memories in her hometown that she generally prefers not to think about. But she loves her sister, so here she is. And on, she's been home for about a week or so, and she's out at a towny bar and runs into Ian, who um, has always had a crush on her. They were like friends when they were kids, and um, she's like, maybe it's not so bad being home after seeing Ian again. And she's kind of buzzing from that interaction, driving home, and la la la. Oops, she hit something with her car. And when she gets out to investigate, she is bitten by a creature in the woods. Again, avoid the woods. um, and suddenly, Rory begins to change, and her transformation is physical and mental, emotional, and she has to confront her past, her present, her rage, and her reluctance to be vulnerable. And yeah, says it on the cover. It's a werewolf novel, so it's not a spoiler to say that. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's some wolfiness.
I loved this book.
Mhm.
I loved the like going home and seeing like the friends from home. I loved her, relationship with her twin sister that's layered and complicated, and they're kind of like helping each other kind of like with their self-sabotaging ways, and like the relationship with the mother and the body horror in this. It felt so realistic.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know. I think that the first like I don't know if it's the transformation scene or like the coming down from it, but just like the
A lot of barf.
rug.
A lot of barf.
I don't know. I love when women get gross. Like,
Yeah.
I just love it. So much about being a woman is gross.
That's
Um,
that's
yeah.
what inspired me to write the book. It's just
Yeah.
like, oh, bodies. These things
Uh,
are so we're like trapped in these disgusting meat suits that don't abide. And
yeah. It just never
um
ends either. Like, no
no,
matter what stage of
Yes.
life we're in, it never ends. It's
no, and
always
there's
just
fun new
something new.
surprises
Yeah.
that they don't tell you about.
Yes, I was thinking about this in reading it because I'm trying to be like, how do I say this without saying anything too personal? But it's like about how they say there's like a second puberty that happens, like your body changes yet again, but nobody warns you about it. Just weird things start happening, and I definitely like had flashes of that. Reading this book, I'm like, oh my god, this is it. This is what everyone's not warning me about, lurking
But yeah,
in the
and
near
I
future.
they we get a talking to about puberty, and then as people with uteruses, they tell us about menopause and things but
Hmm.
like I am 34 and all of my friends are going through some of my friends are having babies, and so they're talking to me about that stuff. And then for me, like my hormones and menstruation and all this stuff have gotten like every month I have horrific cramps. And I'm like,
Mm.
what is, I never had this when I was younger.
Yeah.
What is
Mhm.
this? Just debilitating. And nobody warned me. And part of the reason why I started to think about this book was I was bitching about this stuff in my head. And I was like thinking about the cyclical nature of it. Like once a month,
Mhm.
I'm turn into somebody like, who I don't recognize physically and emotionally,
Mhm.
and I have little control over it. I was like, how come there's not more lady werewolf fiction?
Yeah.
And it exists, it's out there, but I wanted to write a book and channel all of my frustrations into a book that hopefully people could read and relate to. And then when I started writing it, it became about more than just like I found so many different parallels between womanhood and lycanthropy and just being like you said, like being allowed to be gross. It was so cathartic for
Mhm.
me, those transformation scenes where she's hairy and disgusting and then also powerful and like
Yeah.
I just
Mhm.
like want to go at a turkey leg like, and, like just like I like who among us has not wanted to take a rotisserie chicken home and just alone just all right,
Park
maybe
my
I'm
car
showing my
somewhere.
ass
Just
here being
I
like
know,
who
just
among us has not wanted to down a rotisserie chicken alone, and you guys are like you're alone on that one, girl. But um I just like this like ability to be like I'm hairy and I don't care and like I don't smell good and like all of these things that it was so cathartic to just have a character who was able to kind of do those things and be those
yeah.
things and have to accept it and have it be okay and have
Mhm.
that not be the hardest part of her journey because
Yeah.
Mhm.
you know Rory comes more easily comes to terms with like having beef jerky in her nightstand than she does with having to be emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um from where it started to that, this is I've never had a better experience drafting a book. Like this was the most fun I'd ever had writing, and I don't think I will ever like I don't know if I'll ever be able to recapture how fun it was because it was just I tapped into something that was so cathartic. Did I
I
just
mean, but
ramble about for like 15 minutes? Sorry, I
no.
got on one.
No, but you can tell that you had fun writing the book
Mhm.
because, like, I had fun reading it.
Yeah.
There's something contagious about that, even when we're going through the more violent and quote unquote gross parts. And I use gross as a sweeping
Yeah,
gesture because I find, like, I sometimes find vulnerability gross. I find, awkward relationships gross. And I just love how you don't shy away from any of that stuff. Um, and that you ask us to relate. I'm like, what I love is like, as much as I'm trying to speaking about such Shark Deep, I'm also thinking about like all of your books because I've been like working my way through the Rachel Harrison canon. Um, and I just love how you ask us to relate to not just like the 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 more like positive attributes of your heroines, but like their ugly attributes too, and the attributes that they themselves don't want to look at. You're asking us to look at and to feel. And I mean, and talk about a sense of place. Just the coming home in the morning of losing the city in this book is just
Yeah.
so. Oh, talking about stomping around where I live.
well that's I mean because I lived in the city for a long time and I left.
Mm,
And so a lot of
mhm.
that's me working through
Okay, okay.
my issues of, yeah.
Well, no, it's something that I'm reaching that point in my Manhattanite life where I'm like, do I want to stay here, and what does it mean? I love the amount of like, what does it mean to be in like a city, and what does it mean to be at home when your home is not a city, and
Yeah.
what does that change about you? and I also just love, I am a theater person through and through, and I just love a huge theatrical moment. Like I love the werewolf, and I love using werewolf is whereism. I don't know what the actual term is. Lycanism, um,
Lycanthropy, right?
lycanthropy, to speak about, changes of the self, changes that are oh God, now I know how you feel, where I'm like, how do I not word vomit? Like changes that are happening in all other parts of the book, that we get this like lovely magnet of this transformation.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Rachel, what movie would you
This
pair with such sharp teeth?
this is an easy one. Ginger snaps. I
Ah,
love ginger snaps,
I
and
do too.
I think ginger snaps is like, for me, ginger snaps is about puberty. It's about
mm,
teenage being a teenage girl. And this book is about being like being a woman, and how do
yeah.
you like transitioning into your late 20s and adulthood. And um so but yeah, I love ginger snaps. Ginger snaps is so fun,
Hmm.
and it really holds up. I watched it. um I did an event at a local movie theater here, called the Little Theater in Rochester. It's a great, you're ever in Western New York. But they did a screening, and I hadn't watched it without like my cell phone, or like without distractions, in a really long time. I feel like I'd watched it on my laptop before. Like it was the
Hmm.
first time in a long time, probably since I first saw it when I was a teenager, to like sit alone in the dark and like really focus on
Hmm.
the movie. And it's just such like, it's just really good. And like obviously it's from, I think, 2000, 2001.
Yeah,
So
Hmm.
around there.
some
Yeah.
aspects you would think would be a little bit cheesy, but it it doesn't feel, it's not a big budget movie, but it just feels very emotionally resonant, even though it is a little campy at some parts. But I obviously love a little camp. So
There's
yeah.
nothing wrong with some camp.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's also a sister story.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So um yeah, I love ginger
I think that's a very good
That's
pairing.
good. Excellent.
Yeah. Match made in
snaps.
heaven.
Yeah.
That's so cool that they did like a screening with it.
Yeah, it was really fun. And they put it like they have like the old fashioned awning. And so it was up on the awning with
Oh.
like such sharp teeth and ginger. It was the coolest thing. It was
That
so
is
fun.
really
It was
cool.
like
Oh
a highlight of
wow.
my life, I swear. I'm a big film buff. I love going to the movies, so
Mhm.
it was special.
I will talk about this thing between us, which is about a couple named Tiago and Vera. And Vera wants to buy this. It's called an Itza, which is essentially like an Alexa, which is supposed to be like the world's most advanced smart speaker. But then it just starts doing like really weird stuff and ordering weird stuff, and it starts to get really out of control. And then Vera dies very tragically and unexpectedly. This novel is just such a story about grief. Like it opens at her funeral, and that first chapter absolutely gutted me. I think I was like flipping through it the other day just to like refresh my memory, and I was crying flipping through the first chapter. Like I think the way it immediately pulls you into this emotional place, because it's also written like he's talking to his wife, like, I'm at your funeral, you're not here, I see your cousin, like this is the way they're acting. And then the way that Vera died is causing like a lot of news coverage and outreach, and it's like very controversial on both sides of the aisle. And he's like, I didn't ask for this. And so he goes and leaves and is in Colorado for a bit. And like just the places that this story goes, from like tech horror to grief horror to cosmic horror, was just so masterfully done and so just wild to think about. I know, like, I loved this story. It was one of Rachel's picks when we did our Twilight Zone read alikes episode.
Yes, and now what did I Death Ship was the episode?
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah, I feel like this is also Gus's debut. He's
that's wild.
talented, but
Oh my
it's
god,
like out
what?
the gate with
Sorry.
these like
Wow.
masterpieces. You and Gus. It's a beautiful novel. It's very scary too.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think really it always really gets me when it seems like the haunting is in a place and then the person leaves, because I feel like the biggest
Yeah.
complaint in a haunted house movie is always like, why don't
Just
you
leave.
move?
Just move. Move.
Yeah. um but when they do say fuck this and move, and then it gets worse wherever they go, that's always like ah that's always the
Yeah.
worst. um but yeah, it's very scary and very emotionally like emotionally profound and just very well done.
Yeah.
Mhm. I like he brought up that like all the how the turns, like each of the turns was somehow surprising but inevitable.
Oh
Like I
yeah.
found myself being surprised. I'm like, oh my god, but then I'm like, well, no, obviously, of course, and just kept going. And yeah, the grief was a little rough for me, but I don't know. Some part of me kind of likes, like I said, I like gross stuff. I like just covering myself in a big blanket of grief in a story like this. I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm trying to think, I read it a little bit ago. I feel like I read it in like 3 days. Like, it was something that I just couldn't, like, I needed. I needed the end. I needed the whole story to be in my head as quickly as possible. I know that. See, this is when I sound ridiculous.
No, no, I'm and it's hard to like sit in a story like this for a long time. It's like you
Mhm.
need to kind of, it's almost like being now I'm gonna sound gonna sound maybe this is ridiculous, but like when you're in a museum and you're looking at a beautiful painting or a painting that really like grabs you, like you have to kind of stand there and look at it until you feel the range of emotions before you can move on. I feel like
Yeah.
this
Mhm.
book is kind of like that, where it's very intense. What's the painting of the Titan eating his children?
Oh
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
the
Like,
it's Goya, I think, and it's like
yeah,
the artist is Goya. I forget what it's called. I know that
Yeah,
image.
I
Yeah.
can picture it, but
some
yeah.
guy eating his kids or something. Like that's the official name of the Goya was like some guy
Museums
eating his
everywhere,
kids.
like they're
Um,
they're changing
you
it
know
right
when
now.
you're looking at that, like I feel like everybody knows what the painting is. When you're looking at it, you're like, oh, but it's also very beautiful and
Yeah.
captivating, and like
Mhm.
Yeah.
you have to. Anytime I feel like sometimes it'll come up on social media. Anytime you see it, you have to stare at it
Yeah.
because there's
Mhm.
something about it that stirs this emotional response. I feel
Yeah.
like this thing between us is kind of like that, where you're like, I have to, I have to feel everything that I'm feeling, and I
Mhm.
Mm.
before I can move on with my life and do
Before
something
I
else.
can
Like you
like
have to
keep
sit
going.
and read it.
Yeah.
It's not a
Yeah.
book that you can be like, oh, like I'll pick this up later. I'm gonna watch an episode of whatever and come back to it. No, you
Mhm.
have to sit there and finish
Yeah.
it in a couple
Yeah.
of days and consume it and then close it, stare at a wall for like half an hour and then move on with your life. You know what I mean?
Yes, or do it. What is it? I take stress showers, like a shower.
Oh yeah.
I
I
do
do
too.
love like a nice hot steamy shower after
Oh
a book
yeah.
like that just to process.
Hot and steamy, yeah.
Yeah.
I know, like if I say it like it sounds like hot, like sexy hot, but no,
No.
it's like more like cathartic, like let my muscles relax
Yeah.
kind of heat.
I was telling you guys, I had a tough time with moving pairings because it's not like a
Yeah.
straightforward anything story. Like it's so many things. So I was thinking like the technology aspect, I was thinking host, like that found footage, like Zoom, like
Yeah.
seance possession story. But then I was also thinking of his house with
Oof.
the grief.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
think that's a good pairing for it. And I think also immigration plays a part of that story and like immigrants in society. And so that's what I'm going with. I'm going with his house,
His
which
house
is
is
a
so scary.
It
scary
yeah.
and devastating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the images from that one, like the oof, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched that with all the, I mean, to be fair, I watch every horror movie with all of my lights on in the middle of the day, but with subtitles in case I need to mute because the music gets
Yeah,
me.
and then so then I put the volume all the way down.
Yes.
I just read Horror for Weenies by Emily C.
Yes.
Hughes, which is out September 3rd. I want to give a shout out to that because it sounds like you're a fellow weenie. Because I like
I
I watch all horror movies like and with the volume with subtitles, volume, so I can. Um, but that book is for us, and it's very smart and very fun. It's for anybody who like reads the like has to pause and read the Wikipedia page to know what happens in the end, so you can emotionally go
Yeah.
back to it. Yeah,
But yes.
I
Oh,
think
that I'm excited about that one.
I'm pretty sure Jackal gets a shout out, and
What I mean, I haven't read it yet, but we're saying
Just
it's not
kind
out
of
till September.
yeah.
yeah,
Well, I didn't. If there is a shout out to Jackal, I'll be extremely excited because Emily is one of my favorite people. But I cannot wait
yeah,
to pick up this
it
book.
does,
What? Oh my
yeah.
God. I'd be looking forward to that when it arrives and my home. Because that is one thing I do love about pre-ordering books is like you just get presents in the mail.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
Like
like,
that is nice.
I'm
I
like, oh
usually forget
my
about it, yeah, but it
God. Look at this book that I'm really excited about just showed up at my door because Erin from 6 months ago had a great idea.
yeah.
Thank you, Erin, from 6 months ago. One of the traditions we have on the podcast is to ask our guests for a chilling obsession or something you're enjoying in horror right now. So what have you guys been enjoying?
Can that be mine? Can mine be Emily's book?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just read it's backlist, but All's Well by Mona Awad, and
Mm.
I am obsessed with it. Have you read it, Erin? Because it's like very theatery.
No, but I
I'm like, if
really
anyone like I want to hear what you think about it.
okay, because I
Um,
am working on a super secret theater horror book. Don't tell anybody.
oh my god, that is my dream episode topic.
Okay.
We will have
Um,
to.
in a few years, hopefully, I'll be able
Okay.
to tell you about it. Is it backlist?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But
Um,
it's about this woman named Miranda who was like a burgeoning like actor, and she was playing Helen in All's Well That Ends Well, and she falls off the stage, and like after that has like just debilitating, excruciating chronic pain, and she can't act anymore. So she becomes like a theater director at a local college, and she wants to put on. Oh, sorry. You're okay. My son. She wants to put on a production of All's Well That Ends Well, but the students don't. So they're like, this one like nepo baby girl is like leading a mutiny to put on Macbeth instead, and it's like her whole life is just falling apart, and she's so frustrated until she goes to like a bar and meets like, you know, three kind of magical mysterious benefactors who promise that like they can help her get her play on, and that like, you know, revenge will come on people who like wronged her. And like suddenly her life starts getting better, like she's not in pain anymore. And if you've read Mona Awad, she's like surreal, like it gets very like lynchy and weird, and it is so fun. There's so much like rage in this story from like a chronic pain perspective of like a woman going to like several doctors and just not being believed, like pain not being taken seriously. Everyone kind of telling her like, "Oh, you know, like pain's actually just in your head and you need to just like get over it and like just think about things differently or like meditate." And it's just like this simmering rage underneath, and like as like everything starts going her way, just like her character arc is wild, like very kind of like Black Swan-esque.
Oh, I love it.
ooh, I'm gonna grab that. Absolutely. Okay, I have it. My chilling obsession has been imposters or cha- or like changelings.
Yeah.
I was looking into like the original like changeling story that is unfortunately I would argue more a story about domestic abuse and murder. Uh, but I just love the that eerie fascination of like, is somebody who they say they are, and is someone who I remember them to be, and what would you have to produce or do or whatever to prove you are who you say you are. There is, and it's been out for a long time now, but an incredible like Netflix documentary called The Imposter that is
Oh,
just whew,
that's
that
exactly
is,
what I was just thinking of. I
yeah,
love that documentary. That's fascinating.
I haven't
it
seen
is.
this.
You're in for a treat.
Yes, it's pretty incredible. It's really incredible. And that, yeah, that came from my more recent. I feel like I've replaced my true crime obsession with scammers. I love scammers.
I love
Yes. And I do love like the scam of the self sometimes. And it's like, what would you have to do? Like, how could you convince someone that
Yeah.
that you're somebody else, like beyond a reasonable doubt? So that's been, and for that, I've just been kind of like lots of podcasts, couple documentaries, just looking at actual like
Mhm.
cases of people who have returned who are not who they say they are, or maybe people who have returned who are exactly who they say they are. Um, yeah.
It's giving the return too.
Yeah, yeah. Also, I'm like speaking to Rachel Harrison.
No, the return, but the return is supernatural, so that's
Yeah, but
a little bit of a different
but
thing.
still,
But um, oh
and
my gosh,
speaking
yeah, The
of an
Imposter is
incredible
very good,
debut.
and I love a scammer story. I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten more sensitive, so my true crime threshold has changed a little bit from what it was, where I could just be like, "Give me all the murder." Um, there's that funny SNL sketch where Joe Jonas is in it. Do you know what I'm talking? They make a song about
Oh
I'm
yes,
gonna
I
watch a
have
murder
seen that.
show.
I'm gonna
I'm gonna
watch a
watch a
murder
murder
show.
show. Murder show. She's like, it's really funny. You have to.
Yes.
But then Joe Jonas comes in. He's like, "Have you heard about cult shows? Cult shows." And I feel like that's me. And then, but now it's also scamming shows. Like I love a scammer because it's a little bit less like you may lose all your money, but you're still alive.
Yeah.
Um, so I am similarly interested in that.
sure. I love
Yeah.
the Scam Goddess podcast.
I love Scam
I haven't
Goddess.
listened
She's
to
writing a
this.
book.
Yes,
What's
yes.
Scam Goddess? What is
It's
this?
Lacey Mosley, and
She's
she,
hilarious.
yes, it's a scam comedy podcast, and she has a guest on each week, and they go through a couple of different like sections on scams. But oh, she's so
Mm.
funny, and
Yeah,
it's
and
so
she, like,
good.
reads, like, listener stories for, like, scams that are going on now and, like or,
Yes.
like, people will admit scams that they've pulled.
I
Oh,
love
I
that.
want to write in with my scam, even though I'm pretty sure that it was highly illegal. But
Just throwing that out
just
there,
tease. No,
Erin.
okay,
Just be like, my scam
it's
was very illegal, but
Oh,
another
what?
time, another day, another time.
I mean, to be fair, okay, wait here. I can say this. This is I'm trying to like is this illegal? I mean, the place is closed. It was a restaurant. I was working at a very very terrible restaurant in New York City, um, and they just like it was to the point where I was the one closing down the restaurant every night. Like my manager was not doing it, so like I just figured out how to close the entire restaurant down. Or she basically like gave me all the codes and everything. So I was like running the restaurant, and I figured out how to get all of my tips. So they started. You could obviously you take home your cash tips, but then they were putting our credit card tips in our paycheck, which was then taxed. So, yeah. So I figured out how to cash out all of my tips in cash every night and not get them into my payroll.
Ooh.
That is just justice. That's not a scam.
I don't know if it's a scam or just
No, it's
like
not a
me,
scam. That's just doing what they should have been
what
doing.
they should have been doing, which is not
Yeah.
having them tax
Fixing
our
a wrong.
tips.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any other imposter story
Trying to think of like what are
Rex?
the imposter story Rex. Oh God. Uh,
I mean, I feel like I'm thinking of what's her face, uh, Anna Delvey.
Yeah, that's who I was.
That's like scam and imposter in one.
Imposter. I
But
am a
that's a little bit.
little
That's
obsessed
not
with
like,
Anna Delvey.
yeah.
I'm really trying to. Oh God, my brain. It's Saturday. My brain is like, no. Um, imposter stories. I mean, aside from I mean, the big one is Beloved. Like,
All right.
is Beloved beloved? Um, I mean, and obviously the return. Like,
The
it's like
Adams
talk.
family.
Yeah, family. It's
Fester
like
comes back.
talk about a stunning debut. We've been lauding the stunning
Oh,
debuts. Rachel also has a stunning debut that
thank
is
you.
Yeah.
incredible, and everyone should have read. If you haven't read by now, what are you doing with your life?
Oh, thank you. Uh, do we do final girl songs?
Oh yeah. Although like kind of
This
Oh,
like
time I'm prepared. Last time I was like, oh shit, I
yeah.
don't have one. This time I was like, I have to think about it. It has to be cool so everybody knows how cool I am. In case you didn't know. That's what cool people do. They have to prove how cool. Uh, I've been listening to the Yeah Yeah Yeahs a lot. um, I've been listening to shit. What's that album? If I was cool, I would know the name of the album.
the yeah yeah yes.
I've
Wait.
been listening to a lot of vintage Fever to Tell, which came out in 2003. Um,
Mhm.
but I've been listening to that album a lot, and so my final girl song is going to be Black Tongue
Ooh.
off that album.
All right. I will be adding that to the playlist. Right, Erin, what's your final girl song?
I'm in between two. One, wait, can I tell you what they are, and then you can tell me if they're already on? One I
Sure.
suspect is probably already on the playlist. Um, the one I suspect is already on the playlist is "Bad Guy" by Billie Eilish.
I can
Ooh,
check. I feel like there is a Billie Eilish song, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if it's that one.
Okay.
that's such
Which
a
would
good
be
song.
Okay, here I'm still gonna do. Okay, so it's, I would say my final girl song this time around
oh,
is
it's not on there.
Ooh,
okay. Yes, flaming. My final girl song this time around is "Bad Guy" by Billie Eilish because I really do love it. Talking about imposters, I do love when the final girl and the monster kind of get together and it's like, oh no, the final girl is the antagonist, like she is the bad guy all along. Oh, I love that. I love that so much.
love that too.
Mhm. Ooh, that's such a good pick.
That is such a
Excited
good
to add
pick.
that to the
Yeah.
playlist. I have been listening to like Casey Musgrave's album, which is like not final girl energy like at all. It's very like I'm healed, I'm good, life is
I'm happy that
good.
she's in a good place. You know what?
Yes, I love Casey Musgraves. I also am unashamedly like waiting with bated breath for Country Beyonce. I don't know why this
Yeah,
happened. I'm so excited it's happened. I need Country Beyonce immediately.
yeah.
Yeah, it's Friday.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
And
Oh
I
my
feel
god.
like I'm still not over Renaissance.
No.
So the fact that we get another one,
Ah,
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you both for coming on here and chatting summer scares with me.
Thank you for having
thank,
us.
thank you
Yeah.
for having us.
I'm gonna go eat a rotisserie chicken with my bare hands.
I'll join you.
As we all want to do.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Where can
Yes.
people find you online?
They can find me on Instagram at Rachel Harrison's Ghost, and my website is rachel-harrison.com.
Yeah. You can also find me mostly, I don't get this point entirely on Instagram at I am Adams and then online at erineadams.com.
All right. Well, thank you both again.
Thank you.
Books in the Freezer is a bi-weekly podcast. We post episodes every other Tuesday. You can find us on basically all social media at Books in the Freezer. You can send us an email at booksinthefreezer@gmail.com, and you can check out show notes for this episode and all previous episodes at booksinthefreezer.com, where you will find links to all of the books mentioned, as well as several ways that you can show your support to the podcast, including affiliate links, Patreon, and merch. I have been your host, Stephanie Gagne. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time on Books in the Freezer.